You'll want to download the template, and this comes in two parts. You can get this from the Today We Craft website. You're also going to want some quilting fabric. This is made from bamboo and I got it from Doughty's online. You'll want fabric for the outside of your stocking. This is part of the Silent Light collection from Make Hour. It's got some nice detailing on it, which I'm going to be embroidering over later. You'll also want lining fabric into something coordinating. I'm not sure what this is. You want something for the cuff. I chose this really nice, it's like a faux velvet. It's nice and soft. And you'll also want some Bonder web. Start off by layering your wadding double thickness on a cutting mat and use both parts of the template. You can see there's this line here, that's the seam allowance for when you're cutting out the cuff, so just place it so it's covering about 1 centimetre of the cuff template. You can either pin it down or you can draw around it, but you want to cut all the way around the edge. For thick fabrics like this, I generally find sewing scissors work best for me. Do the same with your outer cotton, so it's double thickness here. And I've actually just used a quilting roller because I find this is easier with thinner fabrics. It means I don't need to pin it or anything like that. Make sure that when you're cutting it, both sides are the right way up. You don't want one piece to be upside down. Just use the lower part of the template to cut out your lining fabric. And make sure you do both a front and back piece. Use the upper part of the template to cut out your cuff fabric. Take one of your pieces of wadding and lay the Bonder web over it. You want to be covering the whole piece. I think I'm actually going to have it the other way around. I just think it makes better use of the Bonder web this way. It's not that cheap, it's about £4.50 a metre, so I'm going to cut one piece to cover this section here and another piece for the toe here. Of course, I'm going to be using paper scissors for this because we all know how I feel about people using fabric scissors for paper. It makes me very, very angry. Your iron to the correct temperature depending on what material you're using as your wadding. I'm using bamboo, so I'm actually using it on a cotton setting, but if you're using a synthetic wadding, then you're going to want to adjust the heat of your iron accordingly. Just out of curiosity, hands up if you only own an iron for quilting projects. Yeah. You can tell if it's adhered properly because when you lift it up you can't easily sort of pull it away from the Bonder web. Cut off any excess. Now we're going to be using the excess of this toe piece to do the other toe on the other side. Peel it away. Now this is incredibly satisfying. If you were ever the sort of child that liked to put PVA glue on your skin and then peel it off afterwards, then you're going to love this section. Outer fabric over the top of the Bonder web. If you're worried about any pieces of Bonder web that are showing which could melt and stick to your iron when you're ironing over it, then I would recommend getting a Teflon sheet. Now you can get these at most baking stores. This will allow the heat to go through the Teflon sheet onto the fabric, but it won't let anything stick to your iron. Done one side, you want to repeat the entire process with the other side so you have both a left and a right hand section. Now the fabric is securely attached, I'm going to be using some gold thread just to add a bit of interest. I'm going to be going up some of the tree trunks and just adding some little bits of extra detail to the fabric. So I'm just using a really simple running stitch here. You can do any sort of embroidery. It entirely depends on what fabric you're actually using. It's just a good way of adding an actual, more quilted effect to your stocking. Lay your plain lining piece down and then take your cuff piece and put them right sides together. Run this through your machine. I've used a lot of pins here because the faux velvet was actually really slippery. Then place right sides together. And then sew along the top seam again. I'm going to be pinning this faux velvet fabric really well because it has a horrible habit of moving about while I'm trying to sew it. You wouldn't necessarily have this problem if you picked a sensible fabric. Lay the pieces on top of each other, right sides facing. I've cut a small piece of sparkly velvet ribbon and I'm going to be using this as a tab, so you want to put it at the point where the lining fabrics meet each other. open it up and place it so the raw edge is facing outwards. It's always best to just try and secure it with a pin just to stop it from moving about while you're sewing it together. Now we're going to be sewing all the way around the edge of the stocking. We want to leave a gap up here because that's where we're going to be pulling it the right way through. So I've just got a piece of tailor's chalk here and I'm just marking just to make sure that I remind myself to not go over this part of the liner. Now you notice that I haven't actually used any pins to secure this. I just found that with the fabrics that I chose, they were staying together really well. Even the points where the faux velvet were actually facing each other, I wasn't finding that it was moving around nearly as much as when the faux velvet was backed onto a different fabric. So I found that I was able to just go all the way around without having to pin it. This doesn't mean that you don't have to pin it. By all means pin it, or you can use little quilting clamps if you find that easier to work with. I expect it probably be a lot quicker than pinning it all the way around. But just make sure that when you go over the seams, you make sure they lay nice and flat. This is just going to make it look neater when you pull it back through again. So we're just finishing off around the lining bit, being careful to be as neat as we can around the toe, and then when we get to the bit where the tailor's chalk is, we stop. Okay, so now we're going to find the gap where we've left at the bottom, stick your hand through, and you want to go all the way through to the other end of the stocking, and you're pulling it all the way through so the right sides are on the outside again. Don't forget to pull out the pin, otherwise you might stab yourself. Stick your arm back in again and make sure that you push out all the seams really well right down into the toe. You can give this a press as well if you like. I didn't find that I really needed to, just down to my fabric choice, but depending on the fabric you might want to just give it a quick once over with an iron. Close up the seam by folding the edges in. Now you can hand sew it, but because this is going to be literally at the bottom of the stocking liner, you're never going to see it again, so I just quickly ran it through the machine. It's not the neatest way of doing it, but like I said, you're not going to see it, so I'm not going to worry. Tuck this back into the stocking again, making sure that you fill out the toes well. When you get to the top, you can fold the edge over, revealing that cuff and a nice little tab. And that's how you make your fully quilted Christmas stocking. I'm really sorry about the mess over there. I mean, it is just before Christmas. We've all been very busy crafting. Like I said, you can find all of the templates that you need for this project on my website at www.todaywecraft.com. There's a whole bunch of different templates for other projects on there as well. Feel free to have a look at my other videos and see if there's other Christmassy crafts that you like. If you like this video, then please give us a thumbs up and also hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it. That way you get to be the first to hear about all other crafty videos and tutorials that we're doing.